This is a new foldable from Xiaomi. This is Xiaomi Mi Mix Fold 4. In the world where we have different kind of smartphones, a foldable is something that many are looking forward to. And this is one of those foldables that I finally find that is just making sense. I never really gave too much attention to foldables because I didn't like how bulky they are. Okay, they're cool when you open it up and you have a big screen, but usually the size of them would be too big compared to like a traditional smartphone. But this is where the Xiaomi Mi Mix Fold 4 actually makes it make sense. Essentially the phone itself, if we go through just how it looks and how it feels, it kind of feels when it folded like a normal traditional smartphone, even to the way how big it is. As you can see, it's pretty slim when folded. And to make an even better comparison, this is a comparison to, a Xiaomi 14 Ultra, and then compare it to the Fold. As you can see, they're pretty much a similar size. And the same thing can be said about the front screen. And a lot of the foldables usually had a really small screen, kind of missed the point of having like a normal screen for everyday use. It kind of made it like it's a screen that you can do most of the things or just some of the things, but now we have a screen that you can actually use for daily consumption. You can use this screen as a normal screen. Essentially, you have a normal smartphone, as you can see, for daily use, which is really cool because now that foldable makes sense to someone like me that likes a gadget kind of a thing and likes that there's a little bit more to it, but it makes it look like a normal smartphone in everyday use. But let's go to the most important part right away, the screens. I think those are going to be the most important part about this phone is the screens. We have on the front a normal LTPO AMOLED display, which is beautiful in terms of contrast, colors, everything looks perfect. And this screen can go up to 120 Hz, so if you're gaming, you can take advantage of that. And unfolded, so just the front screen is 6.56 inches, so 6.5, a little bit over inches, which is, I would say, around the normal size for a smartphone these days. So essentially you have a fully fledged smartphone as it is, front, back, everything. Essentially you have the hinge on this side and then we have the two, sides on it. That is where you're gonna feel that it's a different smartphone, because on the hinge side it's gonna feel like it's just the, the side of it. But here you're gonna feel like there's two sides of it. So let's open it up, and as you can see, it looks amazing. I love the animation. It's really thought out and stunning, looks really good. And here is the main screen, the one that you're going to use for media consumption essentially. Well, when it's unfolded, it is 7.98 inches, almost 8 inches. And it has a really nice resolution, so it's really sharp and looks just really good. It is also an AMOLED display, so it looks really good. The contrast is definitely there. You can see the blacks are really blacks and all of that kind of stuff. So saturation and contrast is amazing on this display. One thing you might not see it on camera, especially looking front of it, you don't see the crease on the middle. You're gonna see it when I move it like this, so essentially against the light. But in normal case scenario, when you're looking at it like this, you don't see the crease pretty much at all. When you use it, you don't really see it unless you have some light that is hitting it that you kind of see the bouncing off. Especially if you open it up and let's say I put maps on, that's where everything just becomes really cool, because on the maps where it's a little bit lighter, everything just becomes, even with the light, it's harder to find that crease. But it's not the best crease. I can definitely say I've seen phones with less of a crease, but I guess there is something to be said about the way they build it. Essentially, they had to make a little bit bigger crease to accommodate that it's such a small foldable. Essentially, it is the width and the size of a normal smartphone. But the crease had to be there because there is no other way to make it just as thin as a normal smartphone, but accommodate this gorgeous, huge display in the middle. And this display is also LTPO and also up to 120 Hz, meaning that it's a really good screen for media consumption. And I really enjoy about this screen. I was basically looking at Airbnbs, for example, or on maps, and instead of going for this screen, I was actually using it on the bigger screen. And I just feel like it's made for, scrolling on maps, looking for things, it's just made perfect for these occasions where you're looking for something or, watching something. It's just so good in media consumption. As you can see, we have a little bit more places. Essentially, we have two sides. We're on a normal smartphone. As you can see, there's only one side. But now let's open it up so you can see how it turns from one to another. Now we have the two. It's really cool. It just makes the real estate of the screen that much bigger. I'm gonna have to say this is like the main feature of this phone, but I want to talk about different things too in this video, as I feel that they really made sure that this phone doesn't feel like the foldable screen is the gimmick and that it's the only thing. I feel like this is a whole package, which is amazing because foldables usually we're the foldables, but we're in the full package, where this really feels like a traditional normal smartphone with all its bells and whistles, but having that benefit of, you know, oh, let's look at this photo, it's really cool, and now you open it up on the big screen. This is how I feel about this smartphone. So under the hood on this phone, we have the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3. So you can play all the modern games in pretty much the highest possible settings on Android devices. It's a powerful chipset, and because it's a foldable, I don't know how it's gonna last in long term in terms of heat, but if you open it up, it's essentially making it a little bit thinner and just making it a little bit better for heat dissipation. But overall, I felt like it was working perfectly fine, so I didn't really find any problems with it whatsoever. But just keep in mind how thin it is when you unfold it. And I think there is not much place you can actually thin it out, because the USB-C on the bottom is actually just as much as the phone itself in terms of like one side of it. So the USB-C is almost pretty much the same size as the phone. So there's not much more thinner you can get with this. And paired with the processor, you can get 12 or 16 gigabytes of RAM. In this model, we have the 16 gigabytes of RAM and 512 gigabytes of storage, which is plenty of storage. And with 16 gigabytes of RAM, you can pretty much use it as a daily driver, play games, do anything you want to do with this phone. It actually works on the HyperOS, which is based on the Android 14. So if you're used to Xiaomi phones, this is gonna feel at home to you, but if not, this is your own software on top of the Android. So it's a really snappy, really good usage. Another thing that makes this a full package is the back side, which is the camera setup. It's a quad camera setup, as you can see. We have the main camera sensor, which is the 50 megapixel. We have a ultra wide angle lens, which is a 13 megapixel. We have a telephoto lens, which is another 60 megapixel. And we have a periscope lens that is 10 megapixel. So if you want it to be a little bit more simpler, we have the ×1. From there we have the ultra wide, which is 0.5x zoom. Then we have the telephoto, which in this case is a ×4 zoom, and then we have the periscope, which is ×5 zoom. But you can actually zoom up to 50 times with digital zoom, and after 30 times zoom, you actually get an AI feature which helps you enhance the photo. So essentially, when you're gonna take a photo, you're gonna see that AI icon. If you see that, that means that the photo is gonna have AI in it. Essentially, it's gonna sharpen it out and make it look like it was taken from the phone itself, and not really grainy, not really pixelated. Usually it works really nice, especially in a nice environment, a sunny location, and is a great feature that the Xiaomi's phones have. But like I said, it is going to be AI, so it's going to always be, there's going to be a percentage of those photos that don't work with it. But the camera setup itself is pretty good. Maybe it's not the same level as the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, but I feel like it's definitely a flagship kind of a camera setup. All those cameras might be different size and megapixel count, but all of those do really great job with photos. I would say it's a pretty nice camera setup. There is a little bit of a camera bump, as you can see on there, but I guess it is because the whole panel is very, very thin, so they had to accommodate for those sensors and the lenses. So there's no way to put it when you have such a thin phone, so they had to make a little bit of an island here. And yeah, other than that, those camera setup is pretty good for photos and videos. And as you can see on here, we have the Leica branding, which is the Leica collaboration that Xiaomi has with the Leica. And ever since this collaboration started, the photos on the Xiaomi phones are really top notch. And this is the same case with this phone. You can take photos in two different modes, with the Leica Vibrant and the Leica Authentic. The Leica Vibrant is a little bit more vibrant, as the name suggests. It's a little bit more colorful and just a little bit more eye-pleasing, while the Authentic tends to be a little bit less colorful and maybe a little bit more, I would say, authentic, as the name suggests, and it's really not as punchy as the Vibrant. But it's going to be your personal preference, so you have that choice if you want to choose the Vibrant or the Authentic. I personally use the Vibrant a little bit more, And I use authentic in the low light situations where the artificial light can be a little bit deceiving and make the photos look a little bit different than I would like to. In terms of the video capabilities of this phone, once again we have the full package. You can record up to 8K at 30 frames per second and in 4K 60 frames per second, but you cannot do it on all of the lenses. So there are exceptions on which lens you can use the 8K 30 frames per second and in which lens you can use the 4K 60 frames per second. And one thing I was missing from the Xiaomi 14 Ultra on this phone is the way you can actually zoom in the video when you're recording in 4K 60 frames per second. Here you can only do that in 4K 30 frames per second or lower resolution frame rates. So in 4K 60 frames per second, you cannot do that. You can also record with the main camera sensor in 4K 30 frames per second in log format, meaning you can have a little bit more fun in post-production with the color grading. And one more really cool feature of the Foldable in terms of camera, you can actually not only use it like this as a camera, as you can see we're using it normally, we can actually use it to take selfies with the better cameras on the front. Essentially, we can click here, and now as you can see, we are seeing the screen right here and using the main cameras. Meaning, for example, for selfies, we can use it like this, where you see yourself on the screen and use the main cameras, which is really cool for selfies, for example. It's really easy to take photos. That way you can use the back cameras and better quality for your photos. Better yet, you can actually use the foldable screen in even better way. I actually tested out what happens if you just do it halfway. If you look at this, on one half you're gonna see the screen and on the other you have different things. For example, right now I have the selfies that I took a second ago, but if you actually go into video mode, you can see that on the bottom now we have this setting. So one is the video and one is the settings. Essentially, what is really cool about this, you can put it on like a bench in a park, put the recording on and walk by. Now you can do those creative shots for vlogs, for any kind of videos you want, maybe for social media. And now you have pretty much like a tripod because essentially you place it on a bench. We have the cameras facing outward and all the menu on the bottom. And now we can actually just, put it up or down depending on how much you want it to be, the angle you're gonna be recording at. And now we have something that you can put on a bench or a table or anywhere else and then, for example, walk by if you wanted to do that. So it's really cool and really creative. You can really do so many cool things with that feature. But overall, for photos and videos, this phone is definitely a full package. In terms of battery, this actually has 5100 milliamp hour battery, which is pretty good and is, I would say, a flagship level of size. And it can actually support up to 67 watt of charging. Maybe it's not the fastest compared to something like the Xiaomi 13T Pro or Xiaomi 14T Pro with the 120 watts charging or 90 watt charging on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, but I feel like 67 watts of charging is still definitely a great charging speed for a foldable. It can also charge in 50 watts in wireless mode, so it's pretty good for wireless charging. Overall, I feel like this phone has exceeded my expectations with the foldables. I was always a little bit against the foldables because of the crease, because of the width, they just, how big and, not ergonomic they used to be, and also the way they were built. They were really, big, heavy, and the front screen being so thin, not really usable for daily consumption, and overall just something that was not really for me. But with this Xiaomi Mi Mix Fold 4, I have to say I am on board with the foldables. If the foldables are like this, I'm fully on board with it. And this is a great example of how to do an amazing foldable. It's great for daily use as its normal smartphone, but also amazing when you want to take it a little bit farther and have fun on the big screen. So if you're looking for a foldable that can be used as a normal smartphone during the normal day use, but want to have that big screen whenever you need it or for productivity, this is definitely one I can recommend. And if you're interested in getting one, I'm gonna link down below Trading Shenzhen where you can get this phone from. And also I have to thank Trading Shenzhen for actually lending out this phone for me to test and see how I like it. Without them, this video would not be possible. And this phone is actually running on the HyperOS from China. So essentially, it means it can only be used in English language, for me at least, because I don't speak Chinese and read Chinese. So it is set up in English and I have all the Google services installed. So apart from minor differences and some little features not working on this, I would say it's pretty much working as it would if I got the phone from here. With that being said, that is going to be the end of today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I hope you guys enjoyed this video once again, and I will see you next time.